Organization Committee, and it's my pleasure to turn it over to Brady and have him talk through his session. Thanks, Brady.
Thank you very much, Don. How's everybody doing today? I hope everybody's doing great and had a great session on automation. I'm going to be kind of filtering back and forth through multiple different screens here, so I'm just going to kind of keep it a little bit loose. But yeah, what I really want to talk about today is something that I've built for multiple clients, and really it's just a great way to kind of set up overall governance and automation of the M365 message center. So let's take a quick look at the agenda for today. I'll do a quick introduction of myself and who I am. We'll take a look at what is the M365 Message Center. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I'm assuming that a lot of people have already been there, utilized it a little bit, but I want to make sure for those who haven't, you realize what it is and the power that's behind it, and kind of take a look at what's currently, the notification capabilities that the M365 Message Center has and kind of how we're expanding upon it. Then we'll take a look at, determining what's the correct message center governance for your organizations. There's a lot of different ways you can set this up depending how big or small you are. And I think that I'm going to run through, 2 or 3 or 4 different options that might make sense for you. I've set this up 3 different ways already for 3 different clients. So I think it, really kind of depends on your organization, your structure, your support staff, that kind of thing. We'll just kind of briefly talk about a lot of those different options. Then we'll start to look at, how we're going to sync the message center notifications into Planner and how that plays into Teams, and how we can kind of use Teams as the hub to manage all these messages. And then we'll start digging into a demo for Power Automate and how we're going to use Power Automate to move these messages around from either different channels or different buckets, or a lot of different small things we can add to the planner task to make them a lot more appetizing to the admins. All right, let's dig in. So just a quick introduction. Like Don said, my name is Brady Peterson. I actually have a split role at RBA right now. I'm an enterprise M365 architect. I've been doing that for with RBA for about 5 years. I'm also an account executive. So if you enjoy today's presentation and you think to yourself, boy, we really could use some M365 expertise, really in any kind of a variety, whether it's doing stuff as simple as migrations from Exchange to Exchange Online, or Teams integrations, or governance, or security. Really, from the top to bottom, RBA has a lot of Microsoft MVPs. We have, it's a lot of expertise in the area all around. So please let me know if after this meeting, if you're looking for a little assistance. And there's some contact information there. I have a wife and 3 children, ages 6, 3, and 1. So the house is pretty rambunctious at all times. And then of course we have Rainbow the dog, who is about a year old. So she's been fun. All right. Well, let's hop into the meat and potatoes of today. So what is the M365 Message Center? It's really used to keep track of upcoming changes, including new and changed features, plan maintenance, and other important announcements. Really, the Message Center, if I hop over to it actually, it's really based on making sure that the IT admins have the most up-to-date information that Microsoft can provide on upcoming important changes. I don't think anybody should really think to use the Message Center as a service health center. They have their own information for that, right? So if there's outages or things like that, that's not really what this is for. This is for more empowering your organization to know that there's a critical Teams update coming that we need to actually take action on. I think recently, a couple months ago, they made a change to how PowerShell was enabling or disabling Teams recording, for example, right? And they sent out multiple Message Center notifications to make sure that if you're using Teams recording, you have to make this change in your tenant. And I pulled that one out just because it's kind of a critical example of the power of the Message Center and really how we shouldn't ignore it. I think a regular organization, maybe a small organization that doesn't really pay attention to the Message Center, they may feel like it's just not that valuable information, but all of a sudden their recordings are going to stop working one day, right? And so that's just obviously one small example of the hundreds of notifications that come in. And so really what this is based around is how do we take these notifications and kind of formulate them into a repeatable process that we don't miss things. So we jump back. Let's take a quick small step back and say, who can access the message center? Anybody with an admin role, or I should say anybody with most admin roles. I think there's 8 or 9 admin roles that don't allow access, but really all the big ones do. Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, etc. Those all give you access. For this example,
Hey, Brady, you're muted somehow.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if it was somebody or you. I'm not sure, but we'll
Okay.
make sure that doesn't happen again.
No worries. Thanks for the heads up. So I'll just take a small step back. So almost all admin roles have access. There's a small portion that don't. The main ones, like Exchange, Teams, that kind of thing, they all have the admin access. For this instance, I'm going to be using a service account that it's in my dev tenant, but it's a service account that I give the message center reader role to. The reason I use a service account is so that way I can plop it into Power Automate and never really be concerned that it's my Power Automate flows are going to break of any way. And it can just, be a service account that doesn't require a password reset or anything like that. There is, just to clarify one thing in case you're not aware, there is a special role just for data privacy. Most admin roles besides GA and the message center privacy reader role, they cannot see data privacy updates. Only the GA and the message center privacy reader role can see data privacy updates. So your organization will have to determine whether or not you want a service account to be able to see that, or if it's something more than just the security, et cetera. But just a piece of note there that take that in consideration. So let's jump back into the message center. We'll start kind of taking a look at what messages are in there, how can we filter through the portal, and start breaking down the messages, which I think will help us understand later down the road when we start trying to break these into planner tasks, kind of what we're looking at. So in the admin portal, if you go under health and the message center, you're going to see all of your messages here, and they're kind of broken down by service. They all have a very distinct message ID, and they all have tags and categories. So the tags can, as you can see, major update, admin impact, user impact, etc. And then the categories are broken down into 3 basic categories: plan for change, stay informed, or prevent and fix issue. Now, when we get into the planner task later on, I'll kind of start to show you how there are multiple ways to utilize the categories. I've set them up so that they go into their own channels based on importance. Some, my clients have determined that, stay informed is not nearly as important as plan for change or prevent or fix. So, you can kind of feel how they don't want to get bogged down with maybe some white noise from stay informed, or at least that's how they viewed it. So, we'll go through that later, but I just want to make sure we call out the differences in these tags and categories. And then if you look at the actual message itself, you'll be able to see that here's the tags, and it really is a very detailed message. So it gives a message summary, it gives your key points, targeted release, rollout level, etc., how it's going to affect your organization, what you need to do to prepare, and then some more links on additional information. So these messages are really built out quite nicely to give a concise but a lot of information packed into there. You can filter in the message center based on what application you want to look at or service, the tags, and then the message state, if you favored or archived. So I just want to give a brief overview of how that looks before we kind of keep going, just so that you can understand what we're looking at there. Now, if we look at what's built into the message center today for notifications, through the portal. Well, the first thing you can know or can take a look at is what can you select and not select. So I'm an Exchange admin. I really don't care, so much about M365 suite or bookings or forms, etc. I just want to get notifications on Exchange, let's say. So you can go through here. Unfortunately, there's no deselect all, but you could go through here and uncheck everything and leave Exchange Online checked. And then you could come up and say, okay, yeah, and I really want to make sure that, let's just say all of these are in scope for me. Or you obviously could take some out, but we'll just say they're all in scope.
Hey,
Then,
Brady, just so you know, we're looking at your PowerPoint if you're showing something
oh
else.
my gosh. Oh,
Sorry, I didn't catch that any earlier.
don't I feel sheepish? Just one moment here. Showing all kinds of things. Sorry about that.
Looks like we're good now.
Yeah, okay, so the message center, I'll just quickly, if you click on it, you'll be able to see everything. And your filters are up here, I was mentioning. And if you scroll to the right, you'll see the tags and the categories and the message IDs. Thanks for that, Don. And so if we click on this guy and we go to preferences, here's all of your categories that I was talking about that you can choose or not choose. And then really kind of for the notifications, this is what we have to work with as of right now. So you can do two things. You can either email your primary email address or another email address. So if you want to send it to a shared mailbox, that's one workflow that some people have used. Or you can kind of, I'll show some different options. So you have to choose which emails you want to get. Do you want to get emails for just major updates? Do you want to get emails for data privacy messages? And the reason I can see this right now is because I am a global admin on this account. Or do you want to get just a weekly digest in which you can select, which application or service you want to choose? The emails for the major updates, they're pretty much what these message center emails are sent, to your email address. It's not really a lot different. The weekly digest will have a link and a quick brief description of all of your major changes that have happened or messages that are coming, and that'll be sent to your email once a week. So these are fine, but let's take a step back and think about what happens with email and email communications, right? We all know that emails get missed, they become white noise, they don't get as much attention as they properly deserve. So what we were finding is that numerous clients they started to miss important critical updates because there was really no accountability to these emails. The Exchange admin had them, but maybe he's on vacation for a couple of weeks. Critical update comes through, he misses it, etc. So what we really wanted to do was build out a governance model that would allow us to bring this into Teams, into planner tasks. And Microsoft about 6 to 8 months ago developed this planner syncing option, and it's really kind of changed the way we've been able to work with this tool or these messages. So let me, I think I want to share my whole screen. I'm not doing that. There we go. That's better. Okay. So I'm going to hop back to the PowerPoint. We've talked to that. We've talked through the notifications. So let's hop on the planner syncing. So in the notification center or the message center, this new option here is called planner syncing. And really what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to sync down messages into a planner board and then into planner tasks. And once we get that far, then we can start really massaging the planner task to set up however we want. So if we click on setup syncing, it's going to say, okay, choose a plan. Which plan do you want to utilize these messages to sync in? Now, one crucial piece of information to know is that this is not per user, this is per tenant. So I can only sync the message center messages to one planner board throughout the entire tenant. If I come in here with a different service account or a different user and try to set this up again, it's going to say, nope, service account A is already doing this, it's locked. Service account A would have to stop the syncing automatically, and then the new service account or a new user could set up syncing into whatever they want. But I just wanted to call that out that if you had plans to set up multiple different syncs to different areas, this is only kind of a one-time deal. So it's going to ask us where we want to sync to. I have a couple demo teams set up here. Which one do I want to go? I want to go with let's see, the MS Message Center. Let's do that one in the app first demo. Okay, great. So this is the planner board that I have set up. So in Teams, I'll just jump over here real quick. In Teams, I have I have a team with a channel set up called MS Message Center Alerts, and I already set up a planner board within here. That's just as simple as clicking on Add a Tab, clicking on Task by Planner, and you pretty much have a new planner board set up. And I've created a couple application categories already for us. So I'm going to say, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and sync down into the message center, into the general area. So I'm going to select a bucket. I'm going to say general, and I'm going to click next. Now here's where we have very similar tasks that we did for the email notifications, or I should say similar questions, right? So do we want all updates or do we only want major updates? I can give you the recommendation of that most of my clients have only wanted to do major updates. It does get a little bit white noisy if you do all updates. So the major updates are really, the key critical ones that have outages and those kind of things behind them. So we've chosen most of the time to only use major updates. Then you can include these categories, as prevent or fix, plan for change, or stay informed. If you wanted to, exclude stay informed as well, some people do that just to, like I said, limit that white noise. But I do recommend actually keeping all three of these. And then you have, which services do you want to use? A lot of times my clients will, select half of these things. A lot of times they're not using Sway or Yammer or even Power Apps yet, privileged as a whole scale. So there's certain things that they may want to take out just to kind of limit until they start utilizing those features. So for now we'll just leave it like this. And then it's going to ask you, okay, which how long back do you want to actually sync up some of these messages? So you can, if you feel like, well, we're just getting this in place now, I want to go ahead and sync up the last 14 days of messages because I want to make sure that we haven't missed anything crucial recently. You can do that, or you can import nothing. We have had times where something in the Power Automate breaks and it goes 7 days or 14 days or 10 days or whatever of no messages being synced and we're kind of missing. So sometimes we will purposely restart this syncing and then get the last 7 days that we may have missed. I'm actually going to leave it at this point because I want to sync down the messages later when we get a little further along. But I just want to run through that planner syncing process and kind of how that works. So if we jump back to the PowerPoint here. All right. So at this point, I'm going to take a small step back and start talking about building out what your M365 message center governance actually looks like. Because there's a lot of different ways we can set this up with the messages, and I want to make sure whatever we use, is really trying to work best for you. So, I would say the biggest key factor to determining what's going to work best for you is what's the size of your support organization. Do you have 2 Exchange guys? Do you have 1 Exchange guy? Do you have 8 Exchange guys? Do you have, an Exchange guy, a SharePoint guy, and a Teams guy, and they're all one guy? What does that kind of support structure look like? And how does your organization collectively make key decisions based on your application or your services? So, if there is a message that comes in that really involves Teams and Exchange, and you have 4 Exchange guys and 4 Teams guys, and you need them to work together, what does that look like? Some of the most successful models that we've built I'll just run through a couple within Teams here that I have just set up in a dev environment where we break it down in a couple different ways. So for this one, we would sync all the planner tasks into general, and then they just divvy out into the different the different application and service buckets by themselves. And we don't really concern ourselves too much with the plan for change, stay informed, or prevent or fix. The governance model here is that the support staff is small enough that they don't really want to break it up into separate planner buckets. That's a little bit too much to manage. Everyone is going to be looking at the same type of tasks. So we do a couple different kind of cool things that we can make it a little more obvious that stuff's planned for change or stay informed. But really they just want to manage everything within one planner board. The opposite of that is you're a very large organization and you have different levels of IT different levels of experience within your applications or your application owners, right? So let's say we want to, in this model, we're really breaking it down by category first and then application or service. So here we would have the messages come into the general channel. They would sync into like a message sync center. Actually, here's a good example of what they look like. So they look very similar to the message center options that gives you. Here is always going to be what the base application or service is. So this one just happens to be a general announcement, but you can see it's about Microsoft Teams and recordings on OneDrive. And then it always includes the message center key identifier at the very end. And here's where you're going to see your category plan for change. Here's your major tags, etc. So one thing that we can do, if you have your support structure it's large enough to say, okay, we don't want our senior level guys worrying about stay informed. We only want them to be, plan for change or prevent or fix, but we want someone to look at stay informed, right? What you can do is create these separate categories first. Everything would sync into general. And then, everything would sync into this general planner board. And then from here, we would say, okay, in the description, the category is plan for change. We are going to move this task into plan for change. We're going to throw it into the general bucket. Once it's in here, we're going to move it into Exchange or Teams or whatever the application or service is. And then once it's in there, we're going to assign it to specifically who we want to be accountable for this task. So if it's a junior level admin for stay informed for Exchange, we're going to assign it to him. If it's senior level admin in plan for change or prevent or fix, we're going to assign it to her, that person. So this gives you more granularity to break apart the boards. I will say that when you start to try to move planner tasks from different channels and different boards into each other, you can do it, but the way you have to do it in Power Automate as of right now, there's a couple things that you lose. So I just want to call those out to make sure that you're aware of this. Is all this information in here is retained. So I can move through Power Automate every piece of this critical information. The only thing you really can't move as of right now is comments, which sometimes organizations, are having problems with. Is somebody comes in here, they types a comment, they say send, they do an action that moves this planner task to another planner board in a different channel, and that comment won't be retained. So I just wanted to call that out, as that is one downside to this this model versus going with something like this where everything's retained in the same planner board. You can more easily move those tasks in between buckets, etc. So then, really what's happening at this point is, okay, the task is going to move into Exchange. It's going to be assigned to me because I'm the Exchange admin. I need to figure out what I'm going to do with this, right? And so let's just say this empty task. Obviously, it's a test task I created, but then we have some automation to get a little bit more unique with these situations. So, okay, this particular task doesn't apply to us. I'm just going to close it. It's gone. Move on. Let's say this task, it actually does have some key attributes or key things that we need to discuss as a group. You could take this task and move it into another bucket for operational review, right? So some of our most successful clients that utilize this kind of functionality, they will have a once a week M365 operational governance review board is usually what we call it, in which all of the key players in the M365 world get together and say, okay, what are the key changes that we've seen come through the message center this week, and what do we need to do about them? A lot of, as we all know, M365, everything integrates almost everywhere. So a lot of times these tasks or these messages that come down, they need to be reviewed by a group of key decision makers to be the most successful. And that's really what we're trying to build out here is, you get the accountability of the planner task coming down, moving it into the correct app bucket assigned to the correct person. And then if more work needs to be done, it gets moved to an operational governance review area, and you review it as a team. Okay, I should probably check. Is there any questions? Don, are you keeping an eye on that for me?
Yep. I think there was just somebody was saying that this is awesome because they've been waiting for this functionality to come out. So other than that, no, nothing else.
Great. It's always weird when you're just talking to, empty space. So let's keep moving on, because I'm sure people are probably sick of hearing me talk and ready to see a demo. But I just got a couple more slides and then we'll jump in. let's see. I think I pretty much have talked about most of this. Break it down by category. Yep. Break it down by application service. The other thing we can do that's really kind of cool, I think, is we can build out a lot of custom tags, and then we can actually create automation on those tags. So it looks like I put a few in here. Prevent or fix or plan for change. Another one that we've frequently utilized is something. We'll say move to OGB or Operational Governance Review Board. And when somebody selects that, and then they close the task, it can move this whole planner task to a different location. And so, if you don't want to run your Operation Governance Review Board out of this planner board, you want to, maybe you have different planner board that is has involved different players. That's something you can do too. So I'll show all that later. Some of the tips and tricks that I've had with these tasks, and kind of adding labels and kind of a lot of cool things we can do with them. All right, let me hop back. So I think that covers everything there.
One question that just came up, Brady.
Yeah.
Do you know if the syncs is available in GCC High?
We're seeing GCC High. Does someone want to explain to me what GCC High is? I'm not
so
familiar.
That's a little bit more higher security. So GCC is government version 365, right?
Yes.
So go ahead if you know that. Otherwise, I can go binging and seeing.
I'm going to leave that to you, Don. I do not know the answer to that question.
That's what I thought.
It's a good question, Colin. All right. So let's see here. The last slide we have is, okay, I think I've kind of already touched on a lot of this, so I think it's probably time to start jumping into the demo. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to create a brand new flow, and let's just start walking through this, walk it through together. So, just obviously go to the Power Automate homepage here, and we're going to click on New Flow, and we're going to use an automated cloud flow. And for this, we'll call the flow name, we'll just call it demo. I don't know. Let's just call it demo first take. All right, and so the first thing we're going to do, is when those planner tasks get synced down to the planner boards from the message center, it treats it as a brand new task. So we are going to, for a trigger, we're going to look up new task, and we're going to say when a new task is created. Okay, create. And for this plan, I'm just going to use the more simple version of this demo app first. So I'm going to say in the MS Message Center Alerts channel, under the MS Message Center planner board, I'm going to put everything into this general tab for now. So for the group ID, it should auto-populate with whatever permissions you have to. So you could see a lot of things in here if you have a lot of channels and teams your permissions to. So for this one, we went with demo app first, and then the plan ID is the MS Message Center notification. Notice how there's only one planner there, so that's the only option it gives me. Okay, great. So that was pretty easy. The next step is we actually want to grab all of these task details that were within this task. It's going to come in key later on when we try to do some of our more advanced features. It gives you more information to be able to work with. So I'm just going to type in here, get task details. And there it is. I should mention one thing quick is, when you're in Power Automate and you're looking at a lot of these different options to choose from, the one thing I'll recommend is always kind of take a look at, are there any V2s or previews or anything like that that you can choose from? That usually gives you more options to be able to work with. So I think get task details, there's only the base option, but you'll see it later on when I'm talking about it. You'll see some V2s and some preview options that we'll want to select. All right, so we have our first task. When a new task is created, that's our kickoff, and it says get task details. In here, I'm going to enter a custom value, and I want some dynamic content. I really want from this when a task is created, you'll notice that right there. That'll become important later on when we have a lot of different parts of this flow to be able to choose from. So we want to be able to use the attributes from the correct part of the flow. So here it says, when a task is created, I'm going to scroll down, I'm going to select the ID. That's going to be my unique identifier. And that's it. All this is saying is, I want to get the task details. The reason this is important is later on when I go to add some of these options, I'm going to have the instead of just, let me go back here, I'll show you. Instead of just having the option for, when a new task is created, I'm gonna, right there, and I can choose ID. Instead, I'll also have the option for get task details, which will give me more of these attributes that I'm looking for. All right, so I'm gonna do get task details there. I'm gonna choose ID. So let's just keep this, I'm just gonna keep it very simple at first, and then we're gonna expand upon this as we go through this. So we have the task ID, it's moved up. Okay, so now we want to move this into the correct application category, right? So with this particular option of governance, we're going to bring it into the general tab, and we're just going to move it to Exchange or Teams or Security, right? Okay, great. So we're going to do what's in here called a condition. And in this condition, we're going to choose a value. Now the value, notice how now it says get task details here. I want to use the title for this option. So if I scroll down, actually the title is in the create a new task, just a reference. When a new task is created, there's the title. And I want contains. So the titles of these messages, if we hop back over here and look at the one option I had, I think it was it in here? Nope. It was plan for change, I'm pretty sure. Oh, here it was. I just wanted to show this real quick. So remember that in the title of this task, you're going to have the application somewhere in here. So in this case, Teams is right there, block downloads permissions for Teams. And so we're going to look at the whole title, and we're going to say if it contains Teams, move the app into this location. So title contains Teams. Now, this isn't absolutely perfect because, there may be multiple applications in here. That's kind of part of the reason of, the built-in governance model where you're going to review this together. We've just kind of instructed our admins to say, if you have an app, if you get a message that, also includes Exchange with Teams, that's going to happen, right? Just add the Exchange guy if that's what you seem necessary. So title contains Teams. What we're going to do is we're going to update a task. So update a task. And here's a good example. So we have updated task. That's the old version. They have a newer version, updated task v2 preview. That gives us a few more options. Okay, and here we got to do just two simple things, but let me just point out what's available in here. So we have the task ID, which is obviously critical. And so we're going to enter a custom value, and we're going to pull that ID from the get task details up earlier. You could also use the created a new task, or when a new task is created ID as well. But those are kind of interchangeable, some of those attributes. So you can see there's a lot of other things you could manually enter in here if you wanted to. But note that if it's not required, if you leave it blank, it'll bring over whatever the default is. So if we leave the title blank, it's going to bring over whatever the title is when it was recently created. But the thing I care the most about here is obviously the bucket ID. So in this example, we want anything with the title that contains Teams to go into the Teams bucket. Now, you could just put in Teams in here, and as long as that Teams as long as that bucket is always named Teams, it should work. I personally like to put the actual bucket ID in there to make sure that, if the name were to change or there's any kind of change basically to any of this process, it's still looking for that exact bucket and it doesn't rely on the display name. So in order to do that, we got to get just a little bit tricky because we don't have the option to kind of look up what that ID is in here. So I'm going to add an action, and I'm actually going to create a new task. And this all makes sense in a second, because really I just want to see what that code is. And when we create a new task, you'll notice how it allows me to choose a completely different group ID, plan ID, and what really that means is we're taking a different planner. We're grabbing the information from a different planner board in a different channel. We still want this planner board in this channel, but this allows me to actually check it, and then we can look at the code. So I'm going to do app first, I'm going to do message center, and then under bucket ID, it's going to populate the available buckets. So we see Exchange, General Security, and Teams, which is what we were looking at before. We want Teams in this example. So, okay, that's no big deal. It's set to Teams. But if we click on the ellipses and we look at peak code, come down here and we look at the parameters, it actually gives us the actual bucket ID. So you see body bucket ID. So if we copy that information, close that guy, paste it up into here, let me do a bucket ID. Okay, so now we can feel a lot more confident that if somebody changes the name or whatever happens, it's always going into that bucket. It really doesn't, it's not going to matter. And then we don't need this anymore, so we can just go ahead and delete that. All right, the other key piece to this is the important part is to assign it to someone. So we're gonna go assign, let's see, it should be right here. Yeah, add assignees to a task. And once again, we got to grab that unique identifier. So we're going to say we want ID, and then you can just put in an email address or a UPN or whatever you want to use. I'm just going to grab this one for my test. There we go, and save it. Just so you know, this cannot be assigned to a distribution list. Have tried that many times. Okay, so I think at this point we've saved it. Let's give it a quick test. So if we just look at what this is going to do, just to double check, it's going to come into demo app first. It's going to look at the this planner board. It's going to say any new task that contains teams in the title, please move it to the teams bucket and assign it to this user. So let's hop over here into the MS Message Center alerts. Let's look at the MS Center. And I'm just going to manually do this. So I'm going to say test. I should probably show that just for those who aren't aware. So I saved it. In the top right hand corner, you can test it and you can do a manual create trigger. And so we're going to do a test. And I'm going to add a task. And I'm going to say, this is a test of my team's flow. And I'm going to assign it or add it. Now we should see this is going to run in a couple seconds here, and it ran successfully. Notice all these check marks. That basically denotes that everything in this task worked properly. And then it actually gives you some details of what happened, right? So it says when a task is created, there's the group ID, there's the plan ID, there's the outputs, and kind of each one of these gives pretty detailed information around what this task did, which this one's simple, so it's not really that big of a deal. When you start building this out and it starts getting a lot more complicated, these details really become very important. So you can see the condition is true. So it met the title had teams in the name. So it updated the task with both of these options. So now if we hop back over to teams, you'll see that the task is moved, it's set up here, and my name is attached to it. Okay, so what's really nice about that is obviously, whoever I am out in the IT admin world is now assigned this task. They're going to get a notification that, hey, there's a new Teams option you need to be aware of. Okay, so any questions so far? It's been pretty basic so far, and then we can start expanding upon this to figure that out.
No, it doesn't look like there's anything that has been added, Brady.
Okay, great. So let's start, kind of taking a few peeks at what else we can do to beef this up a little bit. So obviously, we want to add some more categories into here. We don't want just teams. One thing I'll mention is a lot of times people like to use switches here to say, the title is exactly equal to teams or it's equal to exchange. It makes your flow a little neater. Unfortunately, because we're using a contains, we can't use a switch. A switch is only for an exact match. So instead of a switch, we're just going to use the conditions, and we're just going to add a parallel branch. So we add a parallel branch, we type in condition, we're going to add that condition. Once again, we're going to say the title contains exchange. And just so you're aware, these are case sensitive. I've had a few flows break because Microsoft has changed, a key indicator. Whether or not it's like plan for change or stay informed or those kind of things. They have changed capital letters and lowercase letters, and it has broken those. So just to be aware of that. And so we're going to do the exact same thing over here, right? So we are going to do an updated task. We're going to use V2. We're going to put in that ID. get test details, ID, and we need that bucket ID. So I'm going to do a new task real quick. And I'm going to say demo app first, plan ID, bucket, and I want the exchange bucket. Okay, I'm going to peek that code, and I'm going to copy this bucket ID. And I'm going to paste it right into here. Okay, cool. And I'm going to delete this. Okay. All right, so now we have a couple different conditions. One thing I should mention, to clean this up as you're going through, I really like to rename these. So I'm just going to call this one exchange condition. And I'm going to call this one teams condition. Trust me, you will want to do that when you start get 10 or 12 of these different conditions all lined up. Okay, so we have a couple different conditions now that we can work with for this demonstration. So the next piece I want to show is I want to add just a little bit of flair to this in this model when we're not separating the plan for change or prevent or fix or anything like that. So we're going to do a next step that's going to encapsulate both of these options. If I do it here, it'll only go under the teams option. So I'm going to do a next step, and I'm going to do another condition. And under this condition, I'm going to choose actually description. So we don't want updated task. What I actually want is, we don't want to assign it to a task. One second, looking for the right one. Get task details, there it is, description. All right, so I'm going to do contains, and I am going to say plan for change. And what I'm going to do here is basically this. So this is going to say if the description contains plan for change, take what action. And this is, it's just kind of a simple thing that we're going to add here, but our clients have really enjoyed being able to see this a little bit easier. So we're going to do update a task. You'll see what I'm going to do in a second here. Update a task. We need to grab that ID. And let's update task 2. So ID is fine. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to make sure. I'm going to grab the one down here and make sure this works. Notice once you start getting into these IDs, there can become a lot of them that you have to make sure you grab the right one. Otherwise, you could be grabbing the ID from a different task or a different option. So just give me one sec. Let me make sure I grab the right one for create a new task. There we go. Okay. And then all I'm going to do in here, so this is going to be plan for change. I'm going to vet that I have this set up correctly. Hop over here into the labels. And so plan for change is yellow. So we're going to come on here in yellow and we're just going to click yes. Okay. And then we will save that guy. So all this is going to do is it's going to add a tag to our planner task that once it goes through these conditions, so it says, okay, yep, this is exchange. I'm going to move it into exchange. Then does the description contain plan for change? Yes, it does. I'm going to add a yellow flag to it. That's going to say plan for change. So let's go ahead and test this out. Actually, when I get to these ones, I start to test it. I create the task beforehand and then do the modifier because I can't create the task and add a description. So if I jump into the description and do, and just for your record, notes is, the notes field is actually the description field. So I do category plan for change. And I'm gonna close that guy. And then I'm gonna do a manual create task. We're gonna run. It should just take a second. All right, so we got green check marks everywhere. If we look at the exchange condition, it says, yep, the input is true. It contained exchange. It's going to update the task. Yep, that's all true. And then we look down here at the condition we created, and it says, yes, it is true. So if we hop back over here and we do a refresh, you can see that it's moved. Plan for change is in here. Oh, we must have missed a step that I must not have assigned it to myself in the exchange condition. Yep, I forgot that. So we can add that real quick so we can test this again later. Move that over just a smidge. ID. And then I'm going to grab my username. Go. But you can see it still worked as expected. The task got moved, and now there's a plan for change tag on it. Even though the plan for change is in the body description of the task as they sync down, a lot of times, people have found in clients I use, they just find this a lot more user friendly to be able to come in here and see those tags. So it's just kind of a nice little extra to put on there. Let me zoom out just a smidge here so I can see this a little bit better as we're working through it. Okay, so let me rename this to plan for change. Actually, let me just do. Now, the way we would want to create this moving forward is, notice how if I try to click on this, it doesn't allow me to add a parallel branch here. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to set up a no and then a condition within the no. So I'm going to say that if the description does not equal plan for change, I'm going to add action, and I'm going to do another condition, and I'm going to say I'm going to move away from, go to the bottom here. There we go. And I'm going to say when new task is created, actually it should be under here. Okay, get task details, give me the description, contains, choose a value, and I'm going to say stay informed. There we go. And then what I'm going to do there is very similar. I'm going to update task details. I'm going to use version 2. Grab that ID. And then let's see, we're doing stay informed here. So I'm going to hop back and take a double check which one that is. Looks like I don't have one, so I'm going to call it this one. Stay. Okay. And we can move that one as yes. Okay. Now, if we want to do, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste everybody's time by doing the last one. I think you guys probably get the concept. If you still wanted to do, prevent or fix issue in here, then I would just add an action that says no. If it's not, stay informed, then do the same thing with prevent or fix issue over there, because that kind of covers all of our bases, right? So if it's plan for change, it goes here. If it's not, it comes here. If it's stay informed, it goes down there. If it's not stay informed, well, then it's obviously prevent or fix, because those are the only 3 categories. So that'll kind of cover those bases. All right. Any questions on the flags at all?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, great. So there's a couple more things that we can add in here where we start initializing variables that allow us to do some cool things. I'm going to hold on that until if we have some time at the end to show you what initializing those variables look like, to kind of build out some deeper some additional message notifications within these tasks. But first, what I want to do is take a jump back over here to this area and really show you how this can work. I think a lot of people probably are interested in seeing how we've created new tasks based on moving tasks to a different channel. So let's start with this real quick. I'm actually just going to go back into, so just to be clear, I should clarify one thing. What we're going to do here is if the message center synced into here and we wanted to move these tasks based on plan for change, prevent or fix, or stay informed, how we would do that. So I'm going to hop back over here, save this guy so we can test it later. Oh, you know what? Actually, there's one thing I forgot to show you that I want to show you first. Okay, so the other aspect to this that we do want to take into consideration is, well, what if I want to create a task and I want to create it under the Exchange bucket so that way we can, talk about it at OGB or whatever it is, and I don't want this whole process to kick off. I don't want it to move, etc. There, in this initial, when the task is created, we can set some trigger conditions. I should show that again. So if you click on the ellipses and you go to settings, you can set some trigger conditions down here. And really what this means is it's going to allow your task to say, okay, what am I looking for? And in what I'm looking for, does it have, in, let's say in the title, does it have, a key attribute? If it does, great. This flow is going to kick off and it's going to activate. If it doesn't, this flow is not going to touch it, even though there is a new task created. So if you click on add, and this just has a kind of a syntax. So it's at contains, and then we're going to do a parentheses and the trigger body. Then we're going to do an open and a close parentheses and a question mark. And now we're going to call it the title. So really, this is the key attribute we're referring to, right? So this is saying the trigger body is looking in the title, and in the title, what are we actually looking for? So we're going to do a tick. And if you remember in the planner task that I showed in that title, it always ends with the bracket MC number end bracket is to kind of call out that key identifier from Microsoft. So we're going to do a tick, a bracket. Nope, not that kind of bracket. Bracket MC, and then another tick. So we're just calling this out to say if the title in this new task that is created contains bracket MC, then continue on, continue working. This is expected. If it doesn't contain trigger MC, then don't do anything at all. So by adding this, if we went to test this right now and I in the title, I didn't leave, this bracket and number, the test would just sit there and spin because there's no trigger condition on that. So a lot of clients really like to use that in a way to kind of control, well, I still want to be able to add tasks here and there without them having to go through the flow process and potentially moving or reassigning my task I didn't mean to. So I just wanted to kind of call that out for you. Sure, we'll save that. Oh, I apparently have a issue with that. Valid expression, valid parameter. Oh yeah, okay. My apologies. Trigger body. I see it. Okay, let's try that guy. There we go. That looks better. Okay. All right, so let's create a new flow, and really the focus on this one, it won't be as I'll just kind of show you the general basics on how to get there. We don't have to actually break it down per application and et cetera, et cetera. But what I really just want to show is if you were going to use this to jump from one bucket to another, how do you do that? And really that actually probably has more application than not even just, the message center. You can use this anywhere you want to go. So I think a lot of people have kind of some ideas around that. So we're going to use the exact same thought process of when a task is created. So let's go demo flow 2, and we're going to do the same thing. Oops. When a task is created. All right. And I forget what it's called here. So we're going to use the message center sync under the general tab under demo category separated. So demo category separated, plan ID, message center sync. Okay, great. I'm going to do a new step of get task details. Okay. Then I'm going to start building out our conditions. And this kind of, you'll see a pattern here, right? So in this option, instead of title, we're going to choose description. So we're going to say in the description, if it contains plan for change, now this is where it gets kind of interesting. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to close the task and recreate it. If you remember me when I showed earlier in the update a new task, or sorry, create a new task, how we had the options to choose which group ID and which planner board we wanted to put it in. That's really what we want to get to. Unfortunately, there's no way in the update a task to choose a different group ID right now. So we just we're at the mercy of what we can work with. So if we do update a task and I grab the task ID, I'm gonna go with custom value, get task details, I'm gonna use the ID. And all I'm gonna do is progress, I'm gonna do completed. So this new task, it came into the message center under the general board. And what we're gonna do is we are just gonna move it right away. So we're gonna complete it, and then we're gonna do a create a task. Stick in preview there. All right, so now we can put it wherever we want, right? So if we're here and it came into the general and the message sync center, I want to, which one do we do? Plan for change. I want to put it in the plan for change bucket under plan for change, or plan for change channel under the plan for change bucket. Okay. So we're going to choose category separated, and the plan ID, we're going plan for change. And the title, we're going to grab the same title from the last one. So I'm just going to scroll down to get task details, or actually that one. And then the bucket ID is, we are not going to set that yet. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, we're going to set it to general. And then from general, what we'll do after we create this task is then we'll start, we'll do what we just did for the actual applications, right? So we can just leave that there. So at this point, we've closed the first task and we've said, close that last task, create a new task, and create it in a different location. And then now there's one piece of information that doesn't get moved when you create a new task and you copy it from the old location. So let me actually, we need to put these in here as well. The start date. This stuff, because we're creating a brand new task, we actually have to do have to copy over any of the data that is not going to be included, which is the title, the start date, and the due date. And just for reference, those are the only options available within here. So then what we would do is we would get task details on the, oh, actually, I don't think we do have to do that. Update task details. And now here is where we can add the description, which is the notes field. So if we go back to, and we want to do this under create a task. So we're going to do enter a custom value and create a task. And we're going to say that task ID, what we want to add. And notice how, so we're starting to really utilize different task IDs. We want to add the description. Create a task. I am thinking, okay. So under the get task details, which is the first thing we did, right? I just want to call this out. That's where you can get the description. So we've added the description, and we have created a new task at this point, and we should be good. So let me go ahead and save this, and we will test out task ID is required. Oops, must have missed that one somehow. ID of a new task is created. Good. Okay. Great. Okay, so I just want to make sure I have this right. So when we test this, we're going to use message sync center and category separated, and we're going to move it over to plan for change. Okay. Contains plan for change. So if we hop back over here, and obviously, we're under the assumption that the planner board is going to sync all of these message centers down. I'm not obviously creating these manually. So let's just do exchange test task, and I'm going to add that, And then in the notes field, I'm going to say category plan for change. And this is case sensitive, so I want to make sure I have that right. Plan for change. Yep, looks correct. And then I'm going to close that and I'm going to test. Now, if this works properly, we should see this task disappear out of here, and it should pop up in this planner board under the general bucket here in a second. All right, so the flow ran successfully. Let's break it down. Looks like everything should have worked. If we hop over here, there it is. It's popped up in the general task bucket. If we go back to general, we look at the message sync center, it's gone. It's actually, well, it's not gone. It's technically completed, but for our purposes, it's gone. So then at this point, what I would do is then I would run what I've already showed you, right? So I would take this task and say, okay, a new task was just created. And really, so honestly, you just compound on what we did previously, right? So a new task was just created. What's in the task? Is it plan for change? And notice how the description did move over. If it is plan for change, now it's in here. What's in the title? Okay, it's an exchange task. Move it to the exchange bucket and assign it to an exchange user. So hopefully that was fairly clear on how you can move these tasks between any planner board or any planner or any channel. Like I said, the only thing that doesn't really move over is those comments. But otherwise, pretty much everything else you can move over. So if you can live without the comments, this can be a pretty nice and unique way to do things. The one other thing that I should mention, I mentioned earlier, is that I've also seen a lot of workflows work where they kind of treat it as a little bit different, not even from an application perspective almost, but as a team. So if you have a really small team of just a handful of people that manage the entire M365 message center, M365 tenant, you might want to treat it as just kind of a general throw everything into your like an untriaged workflow. And then as you start to go through them, you just move them into operations review, rolling to production or communication tasks or whatever it may be. But that was one other option I wanted to point out to people, that you could, not even use it as an application based, but more of a, where are we with this task based if your team is that small. Okay, well, let me see here. I do have a couple other things that I could show you that some of them are more complicated, some of them are less. We have any questions that have popped in right now? Doesn't look like it. I can show that is true. That is true. Yeah, so maybe I should, it's probably time we could probably do that. So let's pull down the message center alerts and we'll see them file through a couple of these spots, right? So let's see, what else did we build out? Actually, one thing I did want to show you. So there's two more things that I can show you that I think have been pretty cool that have helped with automation if you guys want to. One is moving the planner board or planner task based on tag. So if we did set up some automation to move through channels to say, okay, I want to move this task to OGB. I'm going to mark this as complete, and the Power Automate basically says if this task has this category in the task when it closes, move it to a different channel. So that one's kind of cool. I can show that one. The other one I can show if you want to is let me hop back over here where we have some actual message centers. The one complaint that I get kind of frequently is that these are kind of hard to read, and that they get really bogged down with this block text. And so what I was able to do is kind of break apart the titles with a bunch of variables, and then really just kind of what I'm looking for is this piece. And then I concatenate that into a link that shows up down here as a reference URL. So what happens is, you'll get this planner task assigned to you. You click on it, you scroll down here, and there's a link. When you click on that link, it'll actually bring you to the message center with the specific message center piece message up so you can read it a lot more easy. I think we probably only have time to do one of those. I don't know if anybody is particularly interested in one or the other, but yeah, for this part, I'll just show the we'll get the message sync going, and then we can talk about that. So I think we have some automation built into this one. That's okay. So MS Message Center alerts. Yeah, let's just bring it down into here. This will be an easy one. So I'm going to go back, make sure I have this set correctly. Message Center notification. I'm just going to make sure I want to have the right one. Message Center at first. Yep. Okay, that should be good. And the bucket we're going to use is general. Next. All right, so this, we don't really care about this right now. It's just a demo. And let's do the past 7 days so we actually get some action. So when I click on next, it's going to ask me to review and finish. I'm going to say finish, and those should start syncing. At this point, the other piece of this is to set up automatic syncing. Most of my clients have chosen to do it once every 3 or 4 days, just because, like I said, it can become a little cumbersome. So let's just say every 3rd day, and then create the flow with Power Automate. So this is kind of cool. It's actually going to create a Power Automate in the background for you. The one key piece of information to note is that it does use the M365 Message Center data connector. And so you'll want to make sure that that is approved for your tenant. I have had that be blocked before, so you just need to get that created, or allowed, I should say. And then once you hit create, that will go through the area that you actually want to reference that. So if we hop back into flow, and then we go look at my flows, and we go look at shared with me, you're going to see this sync M365 Message Center to Planner. This is what we just created for that automation piece for the Message Center sync. So you'll see the reoccurrence there every 3 days, and then sync Message Center to Planner. You don't really see any data here, but kind of the key reason I'm showing you this is that if this starts to fail, or you're noticing that your messages aren't syncing anymore like they were, you can come in here and see if there's something wrong with this reoccurring sync. Okay, so if we hop back over to here, you'll see that stuff has started to download. And then within a few minutes, the Power Automates should start kicking off, and these will start to divvy up between all the locations. Well, at least this Teams one will. We only set up a couple, so there's not a lot of there. So let's see. I think we have probably time to do one of the two. Let's do the trigger on the tag. So just give me a second here. What I want to do is use, let's use this one. So what I want to do is set this up so that every time it closes with that green label, it'll automatically get moved to a different board. And it's pretty simple. Actually, you know what? I am going to switch it back to the other one. It's pretty simple once you just kind of know what to look for. So I hop in here. Actually, sorry. I'm just going to create a new automated flow. So this keys, and I realize that we have to do this because it keys off of a different trigger point. So let's just call it green label for simplicity. And it's a when a task is completed, if I spell it correctly. When a task is completed. And let's say at first, and Message Center, sure. All right, the next step is to get those task details. And you don't always have to do this, get the task details, honestly. It's kind of a habit of mine because I always want to make sure I have the most data available to me, but you don't always have to do it. Sometimes you can get the data with just the regular get it when task is completed. So then the condition, this is the key point. So in the task details, or is it down here? Applied categories. That's what we want. So basically this is saying if the applied categories contains, and then this is where the numbers, the number actually applies to the color. So if we come into here, message center. Oh, okay, great. So you can see how we hopped back over and they started divvying up. So we got some teams meetings, or some teams planner task over on the team side, and we got some exchange planner tasks here, and I have a lot of work to do. Looks like I got a lot of tasks. So what I wanted to do is if we come in here and we choose, let's say green, I can't quite remember which task is which, but I think green is category 2. And you can actually figure this out by, I could show you that, that might be a good use of time, is to initialize a variable in here that will tell us which category this is actually being closed with. So this is saying, the applied categories contains category 2. If that happens, then what we would do is basically what we did previously, where we would create a new task, we would add all the information, and then we would assign the task details with a description, and then we would assign the user to that task. So it's pretty simple stuff. It's just closing a task, getting the task details, assigning the applied categories to whatever tag you want to use, and then recreating that task somewhere else. And like I said, everything moves over except for the comments. So with that being said, there's only 15 minutes left. Is there any other questions or comments or anybody has? I honestly purposely tried to keep this kind of higher level Power Automate. I don't know if you saw or if you recognized in the PowerPoint, I'm not a Power Automate expert. So I kept it fairly high level, but there are some really cool things you can continue to do if by building out variables and a lot of different things you can access through here. But basically, I really wanted to show this the formation and the formal governance to kind of help you guys out.
Do I get to unmute myself?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Wow, cool. I think I missed something at the beginning or just forgot already. But so that initial sync where you're syncing the messages to, that's a sync to a team.
Yeah. So you actually, I can show that real quick. You actually call out, wrong one. You call out the team and then the planner board within the team.
Okay. So and then I think you said that was like one sync only. So if we have like, the SharePoint team, the Exchange teams all have their own teams already. Is it then possible, once it's into sort of a general team, to use Power Automate to actually move it to the other teams?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's exactly what I would do is I would sync it to a general bucket, and then I would filter it out to wherever else it needs to go. It doesn't even have to be in the same team. It can be in a different team, in a different channel, in a different board.
Okay. So each of them would then have to have a planner board enabled.
That's correct.
Yep.
And then we could subdivide it further there if there's a way to identify what a subcategory might be.
Absolutely. Yep. And if you look at those tasks, you can play around with it and filter on any information you want to, right? So there are the tags in there. It gets a little bit goofy when you're trying to look, it gets a little challenging if you're trying to look for certain things within all of this data, right? So that can get a little bit messy, but yeah, there's definitely options to what not to do. But in the plan, to specifically reference your question too, if you notice when I go to the planner syncing option after I've set it up, so I click on planner syncing and I look over here, it says last updated by me right now. This is how it'll look for anybody who tries to log in that's not me as well. And you won't have the option to click stop syncing. It'll just say like contact your admin to be able to change this. So one more thing I actually should reference too is that if you do put it in a I've never been able to get it to allow me to change this planner plan and bucket directly from here. In order to do it, I've always had to completely stop syncing. and then reset up the sync, and then I can do it. I think it's just kind of a weird bug.
I wonder if that's accessible via PowerShell.
Probably.
And so the sync, is that the level of permissions required? Is that the global admin?
No,
No?
the only sync, and almost every admin has it except for there's like 8 or 9 kind of one-off admin roles that don't have it. So all the main ones do, Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, all that kind of stuff. And then there is a very specific message center reader role you can assign it to. And so that's what I have done in the past, is just create a service account that has that role and then assign it so you don't have to worry about password expiry or anything like that.
Okay.
I think I mentioned this earlier, but in case you missed it, there is also a data privacy role that specifically allows you to see data privacy messages. You have to be global admin or have that data privacy message reader role to see those, just for reference.
Okay. Do they still get synced? You just wouldn't see them wherever they get synced to, or they don't even sync if you didn't have that to begin with?
Yep, you wouldn't even see them. So like if I'm in the message center here and I go to preferences, actually I don't, 1 second, it might be easier to see it this way. So here, if I click on data privacy, well, I'm not seeing any messages anyways, but I wouldn't be able to, I don't think this option shows up.
Okay.
But for some reason they're not showing there anyways right now. But actually, I think, this is the one area I know on my other, one of my clients, they didn't give the service account data privacy, and I don't see this option, for example, when I'm in the notifications.
So then you'd have to worry. So if you did have someone with the data privacy set this sync up, you'd have to be very careful about where the workflows then send those messages, right? Because
exactly.
if I send it to a team, the team members are going to be able to see it then.
Yeah, what we did at that client, that they didn't want the data privacy messages to go to everyone. So what we actually did for that team was we set up preferences. Oh shoot, sorry. We set up a shared mailbox for the security team that wanted the data privacy messages, and we clicked on other mailbox and sent it to that shared mailbox. So we couldn't set up the planner sync, but we gave them messages to a shared mailbox that which then got forwarded to all the other users.
Okay, cool.
So
Thank you.
some workarounds, yeah.
Any other questions for Brady?
See if I had anything else in my, doesn't look like it. Well, I hope you guys found it informative. I hope it was helpful. I'll make one last pitch that if you need anything from a consulting perspective, please reach out to me or reach out to RBA as a whole. We have a lot of great people that know a lot about M365 and these kind of solutions. Were just kind of thought leadership brought up out of the box. So please reach out if you have any questions or concerns or things you're looking for some help with.